Hello and welcome to the Crimson Stitchery, a video channel about making all things beautiful and useful. My name is Anushka and today I have company. I'm gonna have to just turn the camera. So this is what's going on at my feet at the moment. A lot of enthusiasm and love. No, come on man, not the slipper. Not the slipper. These are some finished objects that I was going to tell you about, but I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be possible. Let's see how it goes. So hello again and welcome to the Crimson Stitchery, a video channel about making all things beautiful and useful. My name is Anushka. Today I have company of a beast. And you can find me elsewhere online as The Crimson Stitchery, and relevant links and show notes for this video are on the down bar here on YouTube as normal. So welcome to my August vlog, the August edition of my Knitting Etc. podcast. I hope that you are well and thank you for joining me. This video is coming to you guys courtesy of all of my lovely and wonderful supporters over on Patreon who are keeping the Crimson Stitchery going through monthly membership subscriptions in exchange for a range of exclusive benefits, including extra blog posts showing everything that's going on behind the scenes and access to a private Discord server, as well as regular online knit nights where we get to meet up and have a chat and work on our projects together, which is really lovely. So if you've been enjoying the Crimson Stitchery and have been considering becoming one of my Patreon supporters, I would like to thank you very much. Head over to patreon.com/The Crimson Stitchery to check out all of the different tiers and choose the right one for you. Let's just get straight to it and talk about what's in my knitting basket, except that so as you will have gathered, the Crimson Stitchery is no longer just two people, me and Mr. Tech Support. The Crimson Stitchery is now three beings, as we have a beast. We have a beast that is pretending to sleep. But if I try and pick up that finished object to show you, the beast will spring into action. I've got a couple of finished objects and a couple of works in progress this month. I'm not going to lie, it's been a little bit up and down. There's been times where I've been very enthusiastically working on stuff and other times where I actually have had no energy at all. And I think that that is down to a side effect of having my second COVID vaccine. I've heard lots of people report back to me, lots of friends and family and acquaintances and colleagues who have had wildly different reactions to the vaccines, from nothing at all to a sore arm to like much heavier kind of symptoms, cold and flu-like symptoms. I had my second vaccine 2 weeks ago now, and I've just been feeling incredibly drained and just had absolutely no energy ever since then. And yeah, it kind of it goes to show, I mean, it's not normal, I guess, for me just to like be lying down on the couch and barely moving, and it happened after the vaccine, so that seems to be the link. Well, I wanted to show you what I had been working on. One of the main things that I've been working on the last month or so is something that I can't really show you, which is quite annoying, but I did want to mention it just to, you know, go through what I've been doing, which is that I was commissioned to design something for a publication, for a book, which is going to be coming out next year. So, you know, it's not like they haven't made me sign an NDA or anything like that, but it's not really appropriate to show it at this stage. But I just wanted to make sure that I got that sample out of the way, and I was really excited about it because it was in a really, really nice yarn that I probably wouldn't have chosen myself, but I was very, very open-minded to it. And it's turned out to be really gorgeous. So sometimes it's really nice to have that little element of surprise in projects. So I'm going to show you a tiny, tiny bit of the finished sample. Hang on. I just wanted to show you like that little gradient fade from aqua grey into a mauve kind of pink. So I just wanted to show you this tiny little piece of fabric, just to say like what an amazing gradient. This is something that I'm working with a commercially available yarn that's mass produced, and it's got this really wonderful effect, and it's just so fun, and it's been a really, really interesting challenge to think about how I would design with these kind of colour effects. And sometimes it's really nice to have certain decisions taken out of your hands and put some boundaries in place so that you can just, you know, focus on problem solving. I definitely get decision fatigue pretty easily, and if there aren't any boundaries and restrictions, I tend to try and find some to put them in. Otherwise, I find myself floundering in many ways. So sorry that was just like a tiny little glimpse, but I just wanted to show it to you guys, just to kind of tell you really that I've been commissioned to create something, to create a knitting design for a book, which is really, really exciting, because I really sort of started dipping my toe into doing knitwear design, you know, hand knitting design, with the launch of the podcast really, and was just curious to see where it would go, because I've always just improvised stuff and made stuff for myself, but you know, this kind of design for hand knitting is very different from the previous kind of design work that I used to do, which was, you know, client focused and with different kinds of clients, so with a different kind of audience, if you like, in mind. And I'm just so thrilled that, you know, although my design work is quite slow, I'm arguably not as prolific as other people that are self-publishing and all of the rest of it. Personally, I try not to compare myself too much, because I'm just doing what I can with the resources that I have, and without trying to wear myself too thin. But just like so happy that it's led to the point where I have been approached by, you know, by another company, by another publisher. So really, you know, quite a large part of that is down to the interactions that I've had with many of you guys on YouTube, on Patreon, on Instagram at times as well, and in our Ravelry group, and just having that interaction and encouragement, and knowing that lots of people enjoy my taste and just like what I'm doing, and like to follow sort of the problem solving that my mind, you know, goes through. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you, because it's sort of through this channel and everything else that I've got to that stage, and I'm excited about having finished that design. You know, my sketch, from sketch to finished sample, it's pretty much come out as I envisaged it, without too much wrangling, you know, just with a little bit of ripping and redoing, you know, just the normal amount, but not too much. So I'm pretty happy about that. And yeah, so thank you for being here and your belief in me as a designer, and as I, you know, have been creating the Crimson Stitchery, which is this kind of studio space, as I like to think of it, online space. Yeah, that's it. I'm like, you can see how happy I am about this, and you know, I'm hoping that this will maybe lead to other opportunities, and just really totally along for the ride, and along for just seeing what will come up, being surprised and taking chances, which is why in many ways having the Patreon account has been just incredible, because it's just a way of demonstrating to me that, like, actually, yeah, this is something that I might be able to seriously pursue without being totally at the whim of, as I said, you know, client work in that ways. And I know that, I'm pretty sure that anyone who's ever done client work, you know, work with people, will appreciate that there are a lot of challenges there. There are a lot of challenges. Anyone who's worked in any kind of customer facing role, or, you know, you'll I'm sure know what I mean. But I don't think of my viewers, you know, as customers. I think of us really as a shared online space where we talk about my creativity and your creativity, and we help each other learn. So it's getting very, very sappy. Now let's move it along. So I finished that sample. So obviously I was quite focused on that. I just wanted to do one thing at a time. I just wanted to start and finish it, get to the end. And now I've got to put it in the post now that I've shown you that tiny, tiny little glimpse. So watch out for 2022. Those of you that are still around, then hopefully you'll remember, and that will be fun. Now the other finished objects are two things that I made for the hound for the hound. So they're stash busting things, they're stashless items. So I've had this one bag of yarn that was like totally cringe, and I don't even know if I went through it when I did my first stashless video, like when I went through my stash back at the start of 2020. I don't know if I even opened it because I felt so embarrassed, because basically I got all of this yarn literally about 15 years ago, intending to make something with it, to make like this big, I had this plans for this big sweater cardigan thing with like a big shawl collar and a little belt, and it was going to be great, but it just never got made. I was going to write my own pattern 15 years ago, and I think I got intimidated. I think I'd made a few twirls of things and they weren't quite right, and I didn't quite know at that point, because I was a teenager, how to fix them. I didn't have the knowledge of the pattern cutting and all of the rest of it that I do now, 15 years later. 15 years later, and several degrees. So it got abandoned, and I felt really embarrassed because my mum had bought me this sack of yarn. It was like half price, but it was still, you know, it was still not an insignificant amount of money, and it sort of followed me around to different flats that I've lived in, and I never made anything with it. And at one point I was like, do you know what, I'm just going to knit it into a scarf. I'm just going to make a garter stitch scarf with this yarn and be done with it. So I started doing that, but I got about halfway through and I was like, do you know what, I'm never going to wear this garter stitch scarf because it's chunky yarn, and I was holding it double to try and make it go quicker. And also there was this point, like maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, where like extremely massive garter stitch scarves were really fashionable, especially when, I think it was when like street style blogs were really, really big, and you'd have these like gorgeous dramatic images of people in the street with this lovely bokeh blurry background in Gay Paris, or who knows where, New York, and they'd have these huge chunky knitwears, you know, that were very, very simple but very sculptural and structured, and I thought they looked so cool. But halfway through knitting that piece, I just realized that it was actually too big for me, and it just wasn't going to work. Like, it didn't really work with the coat that I had at the time, and yeah, so I started unraveling it. Fast forward to now, I started putting some things together for the beast to sleep on, and gathering up like old cushions, old blankets and stuff like that, because I wasn't, you know, we weren't about to go out and spend even more money on stuff for a beast that's gonna, you know, chew it up, possibly sick and piss on it, like who knows what's going to happen to it, roll around in mud and then roll around in the bed. I'm just not really the kind of designer dog kind of person. So I didn't really want to spend any money, so I was like hunting in at the backs of cupboards and stuff for old bits and bobs. And then I saw this piece of knitting, and I still had a little bit of garter stitch that I hadn't unravelled. This was my partner's suggestion. He said, what if you make it into a long cushion, almost like a draft excluder, like a long and thin sausage, so that it can be, you know, used to line the edges of whatever the beast wants to sleep on, the edges of the beast's crate / cage. You know, that I think at one point we thought maybe the beast would like to sit in a cardboard box, so we like made it all look really nice, and we thought, oh, having that like a long thin bolster kind of thing might be nice to snuggle up against, or whatever. So then I made this piece. Then basically I never got round to stuffing it before the beast came home. The beast has joined us from a shelter, and everything happened very quickly, and I just didn't get time to find some stuffing. I was going to stuff it with like old clothes, like some shredded up old t-shirts and underpants, you know, stuff that was really on its last legs. I had a bit of wadding I was going to shove in, a bit of old quilt batting that wasn't the right size for a quilt or anything. It's just some random bits. But I'd never got round to it, never woven the ends. So the way that it's made is it's that piece of garter stitch that was, you know, half unravelled. So I put the live stitches back on the needle, but then I decided to join it in the round, and then I knit in the round in stocking stitch, so it's just the knit stitch, and then decrease down. My partner suggested that the beast might like the different textures of the fabric, but I never got round to stuffing it. I never wove in the ends, and I just kind of dumped it in the corner with the beast's blankets. Yeah. And then it turned out that it's an amazing toy, and who needs the ends woven in, because ends are really fun to snap at. And yeah, it's like a kind of tug of war, go round and round and round kind of toy that he absolutely loves playing with it. It's not his favourite toy, he's got other favourites, but he really, really enjoys it, and I don't have to actually bother to stuff and make it into a cushion. So the other thing that I made was that I had lots more yarn left over in the bag, because I'd really bought quite a lot, you know, it was on sale. And I decided just to make a very simple crochet blanket that was like a granny square. So I just used it all up and made it into a big square. And at first I used it to cover the crate, the cage, you know, just to put it on top to block some of the light out so that it could feel a bit more cozy. But then, you know, I realised that I needed to put a much bigger blanket and have a much bigger covering on it so that it was stifling more noise, to have a bit more soundproofing for it, because being a rescue dog, he's very triggered by noises, essentially, quite certain noises, and the noises of certain people, like my upstairs neighbour. So just anything to try and block a bit of noise while he's sleeping, so that at least he can get a bit more rest before feeling like he needs to alert us and go on the attack because there are foreign invaders trying to break into the house. You know, just a little bit to kind of like lower the potential triggers. So we can get a bit more sleep so that we can be a bit happier, a bit less grumpy, a bit less, you know, on the defence. You know, he's a very excellent guard dog. You really couldn't fault that at all. So anyway, so then I put a bigger blanket on. And by the way, sorry, just to say, like, I'm sorry for people that really couldn't care less about dogs. But this is really just to explain the process of the knitting project. Well, it's crochet, actually. I'd always intended to use up the last ball of yarn in tassels. I was going to make some tassels and sew them on the four corners of the blanket. And I thought that that would be really sweet. But I made the mistake of making one tassel and showing it to the beast, and the beast loved it and it was his tassel, and then suddenly it was no tassel. And this is the last remains of the one tassel that I made. It's gone. Don't worry, he didn't eat it. I threw most of it in the bin because it was mauled. And I just found this on the floor before I started recording, so I thought, this is the last remain of the tassel. Okay, so the cushion turned into a fun toy, the snake cushion turned into a fun toy called Fluffy. The tassel was mauled, and then the blanket, so it got taken off the crate. I think I just put it on the floor, and then suddenly I looked at the beast and he was licking it. And he was cuddling it, and he was jumping on it and wagging his tail, and he was like moving it into his little rug. He's on the sheepskin rug down here, down the side. And I'd never seen him so excited about a piece of cloth in my life. You know, he wasn't that excited about any other blanket in the place, but something about the crochet. Like it's quite spongy yarn and the little holes, and who knows, maybe it feels a bit like his own fur. But he absolutely loves it. So it's just a very, very big granny square, like just the 3 lots of trebles or double crochet, I'm not sure what I mean, just like the basic one that you do like again and again, round and round and round, with a 7mm hook, so a pretty big hook, and like he loves it. It's like it's his friend. Do you want to come up here? Do you want to come up here? It's going to annoy him too much. He's looking very, very distressed, so we'll hold it up. So it's just a little, well, a big piece of crochet really. So that's one of my finished objects. No, he's glaring at me. I'm gonna have to put it back. I was trying to see if I could tempt him back up, but oh no, he's not pleased. The beast is displeased. Very, very displeased. Works in progress. So I've got a few works in progress to share with you guys today. And now that I've sat back down, he's just made a big effort to move his blanket away, like away from me. And now he's got his 2 hands on it and he's licking it. He's a bit camera shy. Whenever I, you know, if I ever turn the camera on him or whatever, he just finds it a bit odd. So yeah, He's not going to be a model, but that's fine. He's no pedigree and nor am I. So I've got a few works in progress to share with you guys. The first is my bobble sweater. So my bobble sweater is currently in pieces. So this is something that I've been designing for myself almost as a sort of part toile, but just for fun really. I'm just designing it for fun. I'm not trying to meet a deadline. I'm not trying to meet any brief apart from my own, which is to make a textured yoke using yarn that I bought in someone else's D-stash. So I mentioned in the last episode that I was playing around and experimenting with adding more shaping to a yoke sweater, and some stuff worked really well and other things that I experimented with just didn't work out, and they probably didn't work out in a way that other people wouldn't have noticed, but I knew that it was wrong. And it's fine, you know, this is just part of the process. Sometimes you try stuff out and it doesn't work out and you don't realise why it doesn't work out until you've just gone through it, done it, tried it on 5 times in different lighting and seen for yourself that no, it doesn't work out. And this is why. And I think partly one of the things that happened was that I was experimenting with adding more shaping to the garment that reflected the body, but I think yoke sweaters shouldn't be fitted items basically. I just don't think that they lend themselves very well to actually tailoring the item around the body, because you need seams basically. I think a set-in sleeve is the ideal garment if you actually want a good fit. But with a yoke, I think you've just got to go for that looser fit, and don't expect it to be 100% perfect, and you know, just call a spade a spade. And what's the other one? Square peg round hole? Yeah, don't do that. So I had got quite far. I'd done the yoke, the body and the sleeve, and then I cut it all apart again. I'm going to have to unravel some of the stuff and then graft it back together, which is probably going to take ages, especially as the yarn is quite fragile. So I'll just show you what I've got. So oh dear, I mustn't drop this too close to the beast or he might think that it's a present for him. So this is the actual yoke piece that I showed you last time. It's looking really, really good. Then we've got the body piece, which is here. So I'm not going to be able to hold it up very nicely. But the body piece, which has got nice little details on the hem. So you can see there's like a proper sweater body there. Put it there, that's a good idea. And then the sleeve, which is the most exciting thing about it. The sleeve. So it's like a bracelet length sleeve with a frilled cuff with lots of texture. So I do need to get round to putting it back together. But I've had other things to finish, like I've had stuff that actually has deadlines that needed to be finished off. So because I've got the horrible job of putting it on the back on needles, cutting it apart, doing a bit of unraveling, it never quite works out as easily as you hope. And then grafting it back together, it's going to take a while. But I definitely want to do it because I think it's going to be really, really nice, fun and dramatic in the most me way possible. Which is, it's good to be taking the time to calculate patterns with like the shapes and silhouettes and little details that I like for myself. But also I'm trying more and more this year, you may recall that I've mentioned before, to set up systems. So to try and find systematic ways of designing knitting rather than just improvising one-offs, which is what I'm more accustomed to doing, but actually plan ahead for multi-sizing, for dividing things into multiples so that works out, and yeah, just all of the rest of it, and just to have much more in mind right from the beginning how it's going to look on the body, and where and how it will be adapted to different bodies. So I am building up my test knitter pool, so I'll put a link for that down below. Again, I had intended to contact people already, like even if by the beginning of the summer, but life happens. It just hasn't worked out. But meanwhile, I would really like to keep building up that pool so that when I'm finally ready, do you know what I mean? Hopefully there'll be enough people so that I can get some people test knitting quite early on, because it will be so interesting. I think that opportunity to see how people are interpreting my written words and the way that I'm trying to write patterns, where I've kind of doing a little bit of, not really doing any hand holding, but just more kind of encouraging you to explore certain things yourself. So kind of giving in one area, and I think supporting in the pattern writing, and with lots of clarity, but at the same time not completely, you know, assuming that you don't know how to do anything at all. I guess I'm trying to get a balance between the sort of vintage English knitting patterns where, you know, the whole sweater will fit in one small paragraph like that, you know, for everything, and the kind of more contemporary ones that are published by independent design houses like Brooklyn Tweed and whatnot, that are really long. They're just so long and they just describe everything in excruciating detail. I think there needs to be a middle ground, and I think it's important to encourage people to take charge of their learning, and find stuff out for yourselves. And hopefully, you know, I will be continuing to support that through tutorials on the channel. But yeah, that's sort of my thinking, and that's why I would like to get feedback from people. It's almost like a focus group. Yeah, just to kind of engage with you guys a bit more, and hear from people when it comes to the garment patterns, not so much the accessories, because I think that's very much, you know, there's a bit less variation there, but with the garment, you know, with the size and shape of people's bodies, that varies so much. And that theme we've been exploring on the channel over the last few months, especially that I've been making videos about how I do knitting alterations. So at the time of speaking, I've got 2 published, I have 1 more filmed, I've got 1 more scripted. They're pretty labour intensive to produce, but if you are intrigued by the kind of things that I've been talking about body shaping and altering up knitting patterns, and you'd like a bit of, you know, guidance and, you know, a few examples and so on, do follow my knitting masterclass playlist, because that's where I'll be uploading it to. And yeah, just keep an eye out on the channel over the next couple of months. I'm unlikely to upload them every week, but you know, they are in the making, and generally I upload 2 to 3 videos per month, just depending on how things go, because again, life happens. So that's this project. I would really like to finish it, but you can't do everything. The other work in progress I had was basically, I got the unusual itching to do a bit of colour work, stranded colour work. And I rarely like to do this. I don't particularly enjoy the process, although I do enjoy the visual aspect of it, but I just don't really enjoy it that much. I've tried it and it's okay. But the thing that really, you know, gets me going is texture. So lace, especially geometric lace and stuff that's fairly symmetrical, I just enjoy it so much. Even just the basic horseshoe Shetland lace pattern, that was probably one of the first ones that I ever learnt, and I still love it, even though in certain projects it can look a little bit dowdy, but I just love doing the actual stitch pattern. It's so satisfying. So yeah, Fair Isle stranded colour work. Yeah, it looks, you know, Norwegian, Scandinavian colour work. It looks amazing, but I just don't actually enjoy doing it. It's too fiddly and fussy, which I'm not into. It's just not my priority when it comes to the craft. But anyway, so I had my, like, once every 1 to 2 years, I have a hankering to do some stranded colour work and cast something on. So I decided to make a pair of gloves, because I'm anticipating having to get up very early to take the beast out for exercise. But, you know, this is something that I cast on before we acquired the beast. But in actual fact, being a rescue, the outside world has the potential to have a lot of triggers, and it very much depends on whether one is having a good day or a bad day, or if one is at the high point of the roller coaster mood swing or the low point of the roller coaster mood swing. So I'm not actually going to be needing these anytime soon, because I'm not actually going to be doing those early morning dog strolls anytime soon. But in any case, I wanted to do a stranded colourwork glove, and I wanted to use some hairy, rusticy wools that I had in my stash so that I could get rid of some. And after a little bit of flicking around on my bookshelves, I decided to choose a pattern from Warm Hands, which is edited by Jeanette Sloan and Kate Davies. It's an edited collection. And Jeanette very kindly sent me this copy for review when it was published last year. So thank you so much, Jeanette. And there is a pair of gloves in here. So it's called Blue Interference by Claudia Fiocchetti. And it's this triangle business, triangle and squares. And this very happy girl is really happy that her gloves match her raincoat. I'm not going to be doing it with different coloured fingers. I'm going to simplify it a little bit. So obviously I had to use yarn that I had in my stash, and I decided to make a main colour, a ball of tuku wool sock, which is a non-machine washable rusticy wool with a little bit of nylon in it. So it's an interesting yarn, but not one that I had worked with successfully. I did knit a pair of socks in tuku wool right at the beginning of the podcast, actually in 2019, and they felted up after just a couple of wears, and then they shrank in the wash. So yeah, tuku wool sock doesn't work well for socks, but I thought that the nylon content would be quite good for the glove, because, you know, obviously it's going to have a lot of wear on the hands, right? So that needs to be quite strong and firm as well. So I'm doing it inside out. Now I've been experimenting with my different ways of doing stranded colour work. Yeah, I'm doing it inside out. So if I turn it that way around, you can see that my tension, well, maybe you can't, I don't know if you can see, but my tension's not amazing. And also it keeps changing, so I think it's got a bit wider at the top when I started turning it inside out. So I did the calf in using my normal 2.5mm higher sharps, which is what I use for socks, and it just felt horrible. It was such a horrible experience. Also, it's a half twisted rib, so the knit is twisted but the purl is not in colour work, and they just had you like doing one twist, one purl, one twist, one purl, one twist, one purl in the colours through the row, and that was horrible to work. So I went round and I, you know, knitted in one colour, slipping the other one, and then I did the other thing, if that makes sense, so that I was only knitting in one colour per row and then slipping the alternate one, and then I kind of caught up with myself afterwards. I don't know if that's a normal thing to do. It probably is somewhere, but it felt horrible. So then I switched, then I remembered that I had the same needle size, 2.5mm, which I think is a US 1.5, not sure. Yeah, I remember that I had that in a circular needle. So then I tried doing it with magic loop, and it was a little bit better, but then I snapped the needle. It's a shame. So then I remembered that I also had bamboo double pointed needles, which is what I used to knit all of my socks on when I first started. I've knit so many socks on these needles, and I've cracked one. I think they're just like a Prim, or, you know, just one of those brands that you get in like department stores, or just kind of, you know, it's not a trendy or enticing brand. It's not like Chalgu or I don't know, anything else like that. It's just one of those basic kind of granny brands that have been around for ages. But actually these bamboo noodles are much better. The ones that I snapped, I bought from the closest local yarn shop to me. It's not that close, to be honest, but all the closer ones are long gone. They've long shut down. Like, there used to be a lot very nearby, kind of granny haberdasheries that were really good, but they've all gone. So the closest one in East London, and so it was like a nice posh Japanese brand of needle. It was quite pricey, but snapped like a twig. Whereas these, you know, I mean, I'm not gonna do it, but I didn't do anything more than that kind of action. I basically tried to pull them out of the bag, but it was caught in something, and, you know, I didn't do more than that, and they just snapped, the expensive brand. Whereas these are great. So I think I knit loads of pairs of socks on them before just one of them had a crack, but it didn't even break in two. So you don't always get what you pay for, I don't know. Sometimes you get lucky, or maybe like more old-fashioned things are made to last. I've got no idea, because like Japanese products are generally renowned for their workmanship and quality control, but that knitting needle snapped in half anyway. So then I remembered that I had these double pointed needles, so now I'm doing that, and then it was still really tight and not very nice. So then I remembered that you could knit it inside out. So that's my latest thing. So I'm knitting it inside out so that I'm carrying the strands, the floats, over a larger part of the circle. so that the bigger part of the circumference is outside, not inside. And also when I'm knitting, I'm making much more of an effort to spread all the stitches out. I mean, the thing is that I do colour work literally once every 18 months, 18 to 24 months. So anything that I feel like by the time I get better about the technique, I'm so sick of doing it that I just abandon it. And then by the time I do another one, the technique is gone again. So we'll see how it works out. In terms of the yarns, I'm using odds and sods. So here's my Tucker wool sock in this granite colour. It's a very dark grey with lots of hairy whites and browns. I've got a bit of my Holst Super Soft, which feels quite weird because the Tucker wool is sport weight. It's very heavy and plump, and you can see that in the finished piece because the stitches are much bigger. And the Holst Super Soft needs to be washed for the fibres to fluff up, and it's much lighter. There's not as much to it. And then the third one is a little bit of, it's like one of those Shetland like Supreme, one of the posh versions with more lamb's wool, not the jumper weight one, but the other one of the like many Jamesons that live in Shetland. I just can't keep up, but it's really soft and it's really thin and it opens right out. So I've got red, dark grey and pale grey. Yeah, so somehow I need to get through this, and I've been trying to work on it, but I've not managed to do more than a couple of rows per evening. If I show you that up again. Yeah, I think it's quite me, isn't it? It's quite graphic, it's quite bold. The colours are fun, but not too overpowering. It's going to be nice, so it'll have grey fingers. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, the beast, the beast. I awoke the beast by approaching the camera. So yeah, so to wit, I managed to finish off the design project for the book that has to be sent off, and then I was just, yeah, as I mentioned, I had my vaccine and I've just been absolutely knackered ever since. And you know, working on this other pattern that I can't show you or talk anything about publicly, but it is something that I'm blogging about on Patreon and giving like a really in-depth glimpse about the whole process of how that project has been developed. So if you're intrigued by the design process, or if you just want to, you know, nosy around and get to know a bit more of what's going on and get to know much more about the projects rather than what I'm just showing you glimpses of once a month on the vlog, then you can have the Patreon blog. But yeah, I've just been so tired. What is it? Just had to go and do some patrolling. This is one of the techniques that I'm using when the beast, who's the guard dog, alerts me about the presence of foreign invaders. You know, I have to go and check it out. I have to determine that it's safe and that there will be no battle today. What was I saying? Yeah. Ooh, just having a lot to work on, but just being so drained by these side effects that, you know, one day it took me all day just to like do a tiny little bit of number crunching on Excel. Like I was just so physically slow at doing it. And then the same thing with the knitting, like just being very slow at going through it. So I've just had to accept my limitations. I think it took me a little while to twig that that was the problem, but there it is. Larder Life. I've got a few things to show you for Larder Life, which is my home and garden section, just looking to see where they are. Firstly, I oiled my wooden spoons and chopping boards. Now, I'm just telling you this because I found out about this on a knitting podcast a couple of years ago, where someone like just showed them oiling spoons, and it was a bit of a revelation to me because I didn't know that you were meant to do this. This is not something that I ever did when I was growing up and never saw anyone doing it in our home kitchens. But yeah, when wood gets really dry, it could crack, but really it just feels horrible to touch. So you need to be oiling it at least once a year, if not a couple of times a year, every few months. So yeah, did my chopping boards, did my wooden spoons, and it's much nicer. And I knew that they needed to be oiled because every time I touched it, I kind of shrank back because it felt so nasty. I guess my fingertips are very sensitive. So yeah, just oiled it. You can oil wooden utensils with with a variety of different oils. And some people online say that you should use olive or coconut oil, you know, those kind of vegetable oils, but then other people say that it will go rancid if you do that. And I was, you know, mindful of that. I didn't want a stinky, rancid, utensil. So I just used a bottle of mineral oil, which is not ideal because obviously it's petroleum derived. But to be honest with you, there's lots of oils, varnishes, paints and all kinds of things that all contain mineral oil. A lot of cosmetic products and stuff like that, you know, nail polishes and whatnot are probably, you know, not like a natural varnish and all of that kind of thing. So I think certain times you just have to make a compromise. And also, like, when I oil my sewing machine with machine oil, that's definitely not going to be like, you know, linseed or flax oil, is it? It's going to be mineral oil because it's light and excellent lubricant. And you know, the reason why plastics were developed really first is because of their use in the military as a lubricant. Like in a nutshell of like the nutshell of like this huge global industry that has caused so many problems, as well as, you know, a lot of innovation and the development of the modern world that, you know, we are in our society today, really due to the, you know, just, you know, the use of oil and plastics. But I'm really starting to ramble. So I used mineral oil and rubbed it. And I did buy one that said it was food safe, but I don't know, who knows. So I did that. Fermentation, I've given up on sourdough. The same thing, exactly the same thing happened that I did 12 months ago, where I like got really into it, loved it, then just kind of, I think I ran out of flour or had a week where I didn't do it, and then suddenly it went mouldy and it's gone. So I've got a little bit of starter that isn't dead or black with mould. I've got a little bit left and I might do another one. Meanwhile, I've got some lacto fermented salsa, which is absolutely delicious. The recipe is from the Zero Waste Chef blog, and when you eat it, it zings and tingles in your mouth. I didn't put that much chili in this. It's raw tomatoes, sweet peppers, like the long pointed sweet ones, and like the normal bell peppers, some herbs. I think fresh coriander would be good. I didn't have any, so I just used fresh thyme and oregano. Loads of garlic, loads of raw onion and a bit of chili, and then you just leave it to ferment and bubble. You like stir it all the time so that it doesn't get surface molds, and it is so good. I love it. I could, you know, I dip like tortilla chips in it, and I just like drizzle it on pasta. I use it as salad dressing, and it's really good for you because of the special gut-friendly bacteria that's in it. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just really drained because I'm fighting off, you know, symptoms that could be worse, but my immune system is good because of the fermented foods. Who knows? That's pure speculation, but just something, you know, just a thought. I have definitely noticed that I have much fewer colds since I've been getting into more home remedies, fermentation, fermented foods, and just kind of trying to actively take a handle on my health and on my immune system. I think I talked about this when I first started experimenting a couple of years ago on the podcast, and looking back on it, I've had a lot fewer colds. I've still had colds. Obviously, it's been lockdown as well, so I haven't been going out as much. But I have been out, to be honest with you. You know, I have seen people. I think it's working to boost the immune system, so it's good to definitely take an active stance about, you know, health basically, just everyday good health, and kind of I'm trying to be more appreciative of when I feel good, sort of noticing in myself how I am physically, mentally, but you know, not just when I feel bad, but actually like when I feel really good, and just trying to just enjoy that in those little moments of awareness and presence. So yeah, that's really nice. And then the last couple of things I want to show you for Larder Life, on the theme of cooking, I did a little bit of jam. A friend came round, she had foraged too many blackberries, and we had some leftover strawberries. We had bought a really big punnet of strawberries that we couldn't eat, so we turned it into jam. Very, very easy, not fermented or natural because it's just with processed sugar, obviously, but the wild blackberries. And we used in total only about 450 grams of fruit, so less than half a kilo of fruit. I think it's about a pound, maybe a pound of fruit roughly, yeah. Which is not that much. And actually it was really nice just to make 3 small jars of jam. Look at the colour. It's like, oh, it's the light from where I'm sitting, because the light's shining on it, it's glowing, and it's really gorgeous. Yeah, just nice to make 3 little bottles. I think whenever I do these kind of cooking things, I always make these huge batches, and then it's kind of a bit much, like it becomes really knackering, but it's nice to make a small batch with a friend. And then the last thing I want to talk about is I made some balms. So from my book that I've talked about quite a lot in the past, the Handmade Apothecary, I followed a balm recipe. So it is made with beeswax. Oh, what's it made with? I think it's just made with beeswax and herbal infused oils. I can't remember if I put a bit of shea butter in it, but I don't think that I did. You basically just melt them down and mix them together. The book tells you what quantities to use. And instead of, I used organic sunflower oil just from the supermarket, so it was super cheap. And last year I had infused comfrey leaves in sunflower oil, and I'd also infused calendula. So comfrey's got active healing kind of like binding properties that kind of heals wounds up, and calendula is really soothing for irritated skin. It's good treatment for like eczema and little rashes and stuff like that. So I made a healing comfrey balm. Just put it in an old jar. It smells of beeswax. You can use soya wax and stuff like that if you don't want to use beeswax. Beeswax is quite expensive, to be fair. But the smell is really, really, really good. I put quite a lot of essential oils in as well, but I think that they might have been a bit old. They were just ones that had been hanging around for a while. So the real smell is the beeswax, but I think the little bit of essential oils distilled the kind of, well, not distilled in the technical sense, but kind of diffused slightly the very like vegetarian smell of the comfrey oil with like the sunflower oil and then the comfrey leaves. It just smelled like a really healthy salad, which is not, yeah, it doesn't smell bad, but it wasn't like enticing and lovely to rub on your skin. So I think the essential oils kind of balanced it out, but then there wasn't enough of it then to actually make a really big smell. So that was really fun to do, really quick, highly recommend it. And I made quite a bit, and it's just really nice to like rub on my hands as a salve. And I'm really enjoying just being able to transform very simple ingredients into a range of different things. Oh, I forgot to say, the last thing that I did was make candles. I'll put some B-roll in. Made candles also with my friend using soya wax and loads of essential oils. This is the second time that we've made candles. We tried last in November and they were semi-successful, but again we didn't put enough essential oils in, so they didn't smell that well, but these ones smell amazing. It's lemongrass, frankincense and bergamot, so some of my favourite scents, woody, citrus, bright, but with like a little tiny bit of musk from the frankincense. Yeah, really good smell. And now we have a beast. I have a scented candle lit most evenings for many hours. It's been so nice dabbling in these projects for my Larder Life segment, and I hope that you've enjoyed hearing about them. Viewers often tell me that they enjoy this segment, and it's generally a mixed bag. I'd like to end this episode of the Crimson Stitchery by saying a massive thank you to everybody who has supported the Crimson Stitchery on any level, from leaving me a comment to buying me a coffee on Ko-fi, or indeed becoming one of my regular supporters over on Patreon. And a shout out to my Patreon supporters at the Crimson Queens level this month, who are Angie Scheitel, thank you so much, and also a huge thank you to Shelley. I'd like to say a massive thank you too to all of my other patrons, and if that's something that you've been considering, do head over to patreon.com/thecrimsonstitchery to check out all of the different exclusive benefits and choose the right tier for you. If you've enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button down below. It really helps me out, and drop me a comment and let me know how you've been. I'd love to hear from you guys. What have you been working on and how have things been going for you lately? Also, if anyone has ever adopted a rescue dog and wants to drop me any advice, I would be really appreciative. Meanwhile, I sincerely hope that everybody watching is doing okay, that you're well, and that you're enjoying dabbling in whatever projects at all that you're up to. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again at the Crimson Stitchery sometime soon. Bye!